Welcome back. I'm Peter, and I'm thrilled that you've made it to Module 3. You're well on your way through this program, and I'm excited that you're sticking with it. Together, we've covered debt in general, and we dove into consumer debt. Hopefully, you've started to tackle your consumer debts by using the Chipping Away at Consumer Debt Checklist worksheet. Now, let's start on today's topic, making student loans affordable. If you're taking this module, you're probably here because you have some student loans, maybe as a former student or as a parent for a child. Maybe you're looking for information to share with someone who is dealing with loans, or maybe you're just looking for more information on student loans because you have some college plans in the future. I think you'll find useful information today for all of those needs, but we're really going to be focusing on what you need to do if you have student loans currently and how to manage them and make them as affordable as possible. Student loan use is massive. There's currently over $1.48 trillion in total U.S. student loan debt, held by over 44 million people. In addition, more than 11% of those loans are delinquent, with default rates expected to rise to 38% in the next few years. It's critical that we stay on top of our student loans. Of course, there are the typical reasons, such as if we fall behind, lenders can garnish our wages or take our income tax refunds. If you're receiving Social Security benefits, even those could be garnished. And for federal student loans, it's much easier for them to do that, as they don't have to go through the more rigorous legal processes that private loans require. And one of the biggest reasons is that, unlike a lot of other debts, student loans are extremely difficult, nearly impossible to eliminate in bankruptcy. This means that if we ignore problems with them, they'll eventually catch up with us. Avoiding hassles is one reason to be proactive on our student loans, but even more important is that we all have things that we want to do in life. Maybe you want to put more away for the future. Maybe for a purchase like a home, a wedding, or even thinking about retirement. Getting student loans out of the way as soon as possible can make all of those desires more realistic. So today, we're going to start by covering federal student loans, the most common type of student loan. Then we'll talk about federal student loans for parents, plus loans. Then we'll cover private student loans. I'll explain how to get them current if you're behind on them, and if you're already current, I'll share some ideas on how to make them more affordable, so that you have as many options as possible and as little stress as possible. And then we'll finish off with a checklist of what steps to take regardless of which situation you're in. We'll be covering a bunch of tactics and strategies that are unique to student loans today. And you should gain an understanding of repayment plan options. We'll also talk about loan forgiveness and how you might qualify for it. You'll learn how to consolidate loans and what to consider when looking at refinancing. And if you're in default, I'll share clear steps on what to do to get out of default and how your student loan servicer plays a key role in it. So let's get started. Federal student loans are the most popular type of student loan. Perkins and Stafford are two common types of federal loans. Federal student loans are issued by the federal government in the student's name. Some can have a cosigner, but loans are generally the responsibility of the student alone. The amount of the loan is determined by need. For example, depending on where the student goes to school, the financial aid process looks at how much money is needed above and beyond what the family can contribute. The remaining need is met with loans, so it can vary quite a bit depending on where the student chooses to go to school. Loans are either unsubsidized or subsidized. Unsubsidized means that interest can accumulate throughout the loan. Subsidized loans are preferable, as payments typically don't start until the student is out of school for 6 months. In addition, the interest is paid by the U.S. Department of Education while in school at least half of the time. Federal loans also have a number of flexible repayment options, which we'll cover in depth in just a moment. There are also significant benefits, like loan forgiveness, which can make a huge difference in the amount that a student actually owes. I also want to mention that it can be very common for a student to have several, even a lot of loans once they leave school. It's common to take a different loan for different years or semesters, so you may see various loans of varying amounts on your statements. Now let's start exploring options to make your student loan payments more affordable. Let me explain how loan payments are determined once you're out of school. The payment will generally be billed on a standard 10-year repayment schedule. You'll have level monthly payments for 10 years. You can request a different repayment plan if it helps, such as a graduated plan. This will give you a lower payment initially, and every 2 years the payment will increase. The loan will still be paid back in 10 years, but the last payments will be higher than in the standard plan. You can also request an extended plan. This will extend out the term of the loan from 10 years to 15, 20, or even 25 years, depending on what you request. The monthly payments are also graduated and will increase every 2 years. However, this will usually result in the smallest initial monthly payments, which can be really helpful if you're working on a really tight budget. Another option that you can request is an income-driven repayment plan. This will create a payment that is based on how much money you earn and will vary for each individual. When determining your payments, servicers will typically use a calculation like this. They'll look at how much you earn, and then they'll deduct 150% of the poverty level income from it, which will vary depending on your family structure. They'll assume that you need this much money to live on. The remaining amount of income is called discretionary income, or income that you can spend on non-essentials. Your payment is then a portion of the remaining discretionary income, usually between 10 and 20%. Let's look at an example. Let's say you make $30,000 a year, which is $2,500 per month. For a single person, they would deduct $1,500, which is 150% of the poverty level income for that situation. This would leave you with $1,000 of discretionary income per month. The student loan payment, often 10%, would then be $100 per month. This type of plan is designed to make the payment affordable regardless of how much you earn. Now keep in mind, this could extend your repayment term to as long as 25 years, and you could end up paying more in interest over the length of the loan. While there are several income-driven repayment plans, they differ from each other. But here's a popular one, the Revised Pay-as-you-earn plan, also referred to as REPAY. This plan sets the payment just as I described before, at 10% of your discretionary income. Because this payment could be quite a bit less than the standard 10-year repayment plan, payments on this type of loan could continue for up to 20 years. Let's compare this to a few other plans. We just took a look at the REPAY plan with a payment of 10% of your discretionary income that can last for 20 years. There's an earlier version of this plan called the PAY plan, Pay as you Earn, that's also based on 10% of your discretionary income for 20 to 25 years. There's the IBR, income-based repayment plan, with a payment that's also 10% of your income for up to 20 years, depending on when you went into the plan. There's also an ICR, the income contingent repayment plan. This payment is higher at 20% of your discretionary income, and it also lasts for longer. You could make payments for up to 25 years. Here's a chart of these popular plans and some basic descriptions for each. I'll also mention that this chart includes the ISR, Income-Sensitive Repayment Plan, which is more rare and only applies to Federal Family Education Loan, FFEL program loans. If you have an FFEL loan, it could be worth exploring this plan too. As we went through each of these income-driven repayment plans, I mentioned that if you're in one of these plans, the payments may last for a certain amount of time, usually 20 to 25 years. So you might be asking, if the payment is based on my income, how can you be sure it'll be enough to pay off my loan by the end of the 20 years, especially if my loans are enormous? Well, that's where loan forgiveness comes in. What is loan forgiveness, you ask? Loan forgiveness means that once you reach a certain point, no more payments are required. In the case of income-driven repayment plans, if you've made all the necessary payments for the required amount of time, once you reach the end of the term, the payments stop. No more payments are required, even if there's still a balance left on the loan. However, if there is a balance left, it could be considered income. If it is, you may receive a 1099-C form after the end of the year reporting any amounts that were forgiven. For example, if you have a $10,000 balance remaining on the loan that's forgiven, you may have to report $10,000 in income and pay any taxes that might be due on it. Keep in mind, the taxes due will still be far lower than the balance of the loan, so it's a good trade-off. Even if you're not using an income-driven repayment plan, you could still be eligible for loan forgiveness. The first type of forgiveness that I want to explain is based on where you work. This program is called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, or PSLF. If you're a full-time employee at a federal, state, local, or tribal government agency, you may qualify. Most 501c3 organizations like charities qualify, and most full-time teachers at elementary and secondary schools qualify. You need to make on-time loan payments for 10 years, and any forgiven balances at the end of the time period are not considered taxable income, which is a big benefit over the plans we already discussed. This program applies to direct student, parent, and consolidation loans. You may also get loans forgiven based on what you do. There are forgiveness programs for certain types of jobs. If you're a teacher, the Teacher Loan Forgiveness Program applies to you if you work in a qualifying school for at least 5 consecutive years. It can forgive between $5,000 and $17,500 in direct and Stafford loans. The Nurse Corps Loan Repayment Program is for registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and nurse faculty members. You'll need to work in a qualifying high-need area, but you could have 60% of your loans forgiven in just 2 years. Now, the Federal Perkins Loan Cancellation Program only applies to Perkins loans, which are slightly less common. However, education workers such as teachers, firefighters, law enforcement officers, nurses, public defenders, and service volunteers could have all of their Perkins loans canceled. Loans are partially forgiven each year, starting with 15% in the first year and again in the second year, then 20% in each of the next 2 years, and then the last 30% in the 5th year. There are also a number of state-sponsored forgiveness programs based on the needs in individual states. It's a good idea to check and see if you're working in a high-need area, and the link shown here for the American Federation of Teachers funding database could be a great place to start. You'll also want to carefully consider which loan programs fit you best and how to maximize the benefit. For example, if you qualify, it might be best to use an income-driven repayment plan to get an affordable monthly payment, and also use the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program to shorten the length of the repayment period as well. It also avoids the taxability of the forgiven balance. If you're looking at loan consolidation, you may not want to include Perkins loans in the consolidation, so that you can still use the Federal Perkins Loan Cancellation Program, since it could eliminate the loan over 5 years. You also can't use multiple programs. For example, as a teacher, you can only take advantage of either the Teacher Loan Forgiveness Program or the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, but not both at the same time. But if you do get into a plan that creates an affordable monthly payment, you'll also want to think about whether you want to pay aggressively and pay it off as soon as possible, or if you're better off paying for the required period of time and having some of that balance forgiven. These kinds of decisions can depend a lot on the specifics of your situation, so it could be a good idea to discuss them with someone. Now let's discuss another option. As I mentioned earlier, you may have several, even a lot of loans by the time you leave school. You can consolidate these federal loans into a single loan called a direct consolidation loan. There are some advantages to doing this, including convenience, not having to track multiple loan balances. You'll also have a single payment, and you don't have to worry much about the interest rate changing, as your overall interest rate stays essentially the same since it's a weighted average of your current loans. You might also get a lower monthly payment. Now let's talk about the cons, and the big one is that lower monthly payment is probably because you've extended out the length of the loan. This could be fine if getting the most affordable payment is the most important thing to you. Any progress you've been making towards repayment plans or forgiveness programs like the ones we just discussed won't count anymore, since the consolidated loan is considered a new loan. You also cannot combine loans that belong to a parent with loans that belong to a student. Students can only consolidate their own loans. Parents can only consolidate their own loans too. We'll talk more about that later. And we're still only discussing federal loans at this point. This doesn't apply to private loans. Now, if you want to pursue consolidating your loans, you can start that process conveniently online at the website shown here at studentloans.gov. You can fill out the online app, which takes less than 30 minutes, and there's no fee to apply. Another option is to refinance your federal student loans. When I talk about refinancing, I'm talking about paying off your federal student loans with a new loan from a private financial institution like a bank. If you've seen commercials or ads for services to refinance or consolidate your student loans, these are generally by private financial institutions. Now, there are some advantages to doing this. You might be able to get a better interest rate from a bank or a credit union. This alone could mean a decent reduction in your monthly payment, which in turn might allow you to make the same monthly payment you're currently making, but pay off the loan even faster. Another advantage over loan consolidation is that you can refinance any type of loan, including federal or private or a combination, into a new private loan. And if you had someone co-sign a loan for you, it might let you release someone from their obligation. For example, if you have a parent who co-signed with you and you're making payments right now, it might be nice to release them from the risk of being on the hook for it. There are a number of disadvantages too. Getting a private loan is going to depend entirely on your creditworthiness. If you don't have the credit history or the income to justify it, you might not be able to get the loan. You will also lose any federal loan protections and benefits that we just covered, like income-driven repayment plans, loan forgiveness, and deferment and forbearance, which I'll cover shortly. And because you might give up loan forgiveness or extend the loan out further, you could end up paying more in the long run. You'll want to carefully consider the trade-offs and what to expect out of your career path before jumping into a refinance. I also want to cover a couple of other ways that student loans might be eliminated. The first is loan cancellation. Your loan might be canceled if there were serious issues with the school you attended, such as the school closed while you were enrolled. A loan might be canceled if the school failed to pay you a refund that you were owed, or if the school falsely allowed you in. Another way a loan might be eliminated is called discharge. A loan discharge can happen for several reasons, but becoming disabled and unable to work is one of them. If you're a veteran, and the Department of Veteran Affairs determines that you're unemployable due to service-related disability, your student loans can be discharged. If you're receiving Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, or Supplemental Security Income, SSI, you could be eligible for discharge. And if you're unable to engage in substantial gainful employment or activities due to a total and permanent disability verified by your doctor, you're also eligible for a discharge. Here's a more complete chart of forgiveness, cancellation, and discharge programs. Most of these programs apply to direct federal loans. A few of them don't apply to Perkins loans. However, the Perkins Loan Cancellation Program is unique and only applies to Perkins loans. Now that we've covered some of the features of federal student loans to help borrowers who are current, let's cover some specific tips if you're falling behind. First, I want to explain what stages of being behind look like. For federal loans, if you're late on a payment, you'll first be delinquent. You'll probably be contacted by your loan servicer during the first 15 days after a payment is due to bring it current. Over the next 60 to 90 days, most servicers will start reporting the late payment to credit bureaus. After 9 months after the last payment, the loan will enter default status. At this point, you'll probably be notified with a formal letter. If you have private loans, there's no grace period of delinquency like there is on federal student loans. Your loans are immediately in default the day after your payment was due. Your lender will probably try to contact you to collect a payment and report it to the credit bureaus over the next 3 to 4 months. When either of these loans are in default, you should expect that they will try to collect aggressively, often by pursuing legal options. In fact, for federal student loans, they can garnish wages or intercept your federal tax refund without getting a court order like private lenders need to. If you're behind on your payments, you want to start exploring your options right away. This will prevent you from falling further behind, from having your servicer constantly reach out to you, and from receiving unwanted marks on your credit report. As soon as you're having difficulty, contact your loan servicer, explain your situation to them, and ask for help. They'll probably present you with various options like extended repayment schedules or income-driven repayment plans. You'll want to review them to make sure that you can afford them and what impact they will have on your loan. Making a payment will go a long way towards showing them that you're serious about working with them. If you're late on payments because you have other obligations at other times during the month, it may help to request a due date change to have the payment closer to a different pay period. A direct loan consolidation might be the answer to get a payment to a more affordable level. You might also want to look at refinancing your federal loan into a private loan as we discussed. And another option might be to request a deferment or a forbearance. Let's discuss in more detail deferment and forbearance. Deferment means that you can temporarily stop making payments. During deferment, the loan may also stop accruing interest. I think of this as pausing the loan because the loan isn't growing and you're not making any payments during this time. It could give you enough time to deal with a sudden change to your income and get back on track. Here are some situations that might make you eligible for deferment. You're enrolled in school at least half-time, or you're the parent of a student enrolled at least half-time. Perhaps you're unemployed or unable to find full-time work. You may be experiencing an economic hardship. And if you're serving the Peace Corps or on active military duty, you might be able to put your loan in deferment. Forbearance is similar. Your payments are suspended or reduced. However, the big difference is that interest may still accrue, even though you may not be making payments. I think of this as muting your loan. The loan is continuing to grow, but you may not have to deal with it during the forbearance period. There are also a number of reasons that you might qualify for forbearance, including medical expenses, becoming unemployed, suffering from an economic hardship, or other special circumstances. These reasons might qualify you for a general forbearance, which is subject to approval by your lender. However, there are some reasons that they may be required to grant you forbearance, such as being on active status in the National Guard. Deferments and forbearances do not happen automatically. You have to contact your loan servicer and request it. Now let's discuss default on federal student loans. If you're more than 9 months behind, you're considered in default. You may have received a notice of default on it, and the total might be much higher than you expected. That's because once the loan is in default, the entire balance, principal and interest, is due immediately. While in default, you won't be eligible for deferment or forbearance. You also can't get one of the repayment plans that we covered, and if you're in school or planning to go back, you won't be eligible for additional federal student aid. On top of that, you should expect wage garnishments and tax refunds due to you to be seized, which surprises a lot of borrowers during tax season. You'll also probably see negative impacts to your credit history and score due to late missed payments being reported, in addition to the default. You might also be responsible for late fees, collection fees, or court fees. And lastly, you should expect to be contacted by collection agencies or collectors. If you find yourself in a default situation, there are some things that you can do. Although this may seem strange, you can pay off the loan in full. However, typically, being behind on the loan is due to not having funds. But if it's just a small loan that you forgot about and can pay off, that's an option. Secondly, you might be able to pay it off by refinancing it with a private loan. You'd have to get a new loan to pay off the defaulted loan in its entirety, which also might be difficult, especially if your credit history has suffered because of the default. The last and probably most realistic option is to rehabilitate the loan. What that means is that you'll enter into a temporary agreement with the lender to make payments on the loan. If you meet your end of the deal, the loan will be rehabilitated and out of default status. This will allow you to explore and pursue some of the other options that we covered earlier and get back to paying it off. So you're probably wondering, how exactly do you rehabilitate a loan? Well, the process is actually pretty straightforward. You'll contact your loan servicer, or if you've been contacted by a collection agency, you'll work with them directly. You'll request rehabilitation, which will begin a process with them to determine a reasonable, fixed, affordable monthly payment. They'll generally determine a payment in one of two ways. Either they'll base it on 15% of your discretionary income, or if you object to that payment, you can request and complete an income and expense worksheet, which your servicer will review and calculate a reasonable payment. Once the payment is determined, you'll have to agree to a 10-month-long contract, where you will agree to make these new payments on time, meaning no later than 20 days past the due dates. If you start, you'll want to do everything possible to make sure that you stick to the terms, because you only get one chance at rehabilitation. After you rehabilitate, you'll once again be eligible for new student loans, flexible repayment options, and the default will even be removed from your credit report. Rehabilitation can be a great option if you find yourself in this situation. And to get started is as easy as reaching out to your loan servicer or the collection agency that contacted you. So now we've covered the range of options that students with loans have, regardless of what state their loan is in. Now let's switch to the other category of federal loans, the federal parent loans, often called PLUS loans, which stands for Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. Federal parent loans allow parents to help pay for their children's college costs. They are similar in many ways to student loans. For instance, they are issued by the federal government, but they are issued directly to the parent. Again, they are based on need depending on where the student goes to college. They also have a fixed interest rate, and as their name suggests, they are only for undergraduate schooling. One of the big differences is that they have significantly more limited benefits and options than the student loans. Another thing to keep in mind is that students will sometimes pay the monthly payments for the parents or pay the parents directly for the loan. While this is fine, it's an unofficial arrangement, and the parents are responsible for the loan. So if the student isn't willing or isn't able to pay, the parent is still on the hook for the loan. And just like federal student loans, the parent loans will automatically be scheduled to be repaid in equal installments over 10 years. However, you'll also have the option of a graduated repayment plan, with payments starting lower but rising every 2 years. Or you can extend the plan out to as much as 25 years. Keep in mind, for some parents, this could mean that payments are still due well into retirement. Here is where we find perhaps one of the biggest disappointments for federal parent loans. Income-driven repayment plans, while popular with student loans, are not available for parent loans. However, there is a bit of a loophole for parents. You can consolidate your PLUS loans into a direct consolidation loan. If you do that, you could be eligible to use the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, ICR. This is the only income-driven repayment plan available, and it could keep your payment to 20% of your discretionary income and last for 25 years. Keep in mind, this is based on the income of the parent. And if you're interested in pursuing a consolidation and then exploring ICR, contact your loan servicer or submit the online application at studentloans.gov. Just like the lack of repayment plans, loan forgiveness options are also quite limited. However, parents may qualify for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program if they work as a full-time employee at a federal, state, local, or tribal government agency. Or if you work at a 501c3 organization or are a school teacher, you may also qualify. This program may limit your loan repayment to just 10 years. Loan deferment and forbearance may also be an option, although probably unsurprisingly, there are also more limitations. For example, the student who the loan was for would need to be currently enrolled in school, or the parent has to be currently out of work. Whether you're current on your parent loan or a bit behind, it might be worth considering refinancing your federal parent loan into a private loan. You might be able to get a lower interest rate or a different loan length, which might make it more affordable. Something else to consider is having the student take out a private loan individually to pay off your parent loan. This would release you from the responsibility of a loan if that's your objective. And if you're in default, federal parent loans are also eligible for rehabilitation. This may be the best option, especially when it might be tempting to borrow from your home equity or retirement plan to pay it off. Now that we've covered federal student and parent loan features and options, you might be asking, how do I pursue them? That's where student loan servicers come in. Even though for federal loans, the loan is granted to you by the government, loan servicers are the companies that you'll be interacting with. Servicers are assigned to you by the U.S. Department of Education. They perform administrative tasks on behalf of your federal student loan provider and are generally listed on your loan statements. You'll work with them if you're having trouble paying or want to apply for a different repayment plan. This is a more complete list of loan servicers. If you have questions or need to explore options on your loan, you can find your servicer on your statements. You'll want to contact them either by going to their website where you can initiate some requests or by calling them and discussing your needs with a representative. Now that we've covered federal student loans in detail, both for students and for parents, let's talk about private student loans. Private student loans are loans that are issued by a private financial institution like a bank or a credit union. While they can be issued directly to an individual, such as a student or a parent, many lenders prefer to have a cosigner on the loan so that they have a better chance of collecting payments. They are also based on the borrower's creditworthiness, meaning that income and credit history will determine how much, if any, the borrower can qualify for. They can have a fixed or variable interest rate, meaning that sometimes the interest rate can change over time. And they generally have strict repayment plans. Sometimes payments are due immediately after taking the loan, unlike federal loans, which usually start after the grace period after a student graduates. They also don't have flexible repayment plans, nor is there a formal program to consolidate loans like federal loans. And even though they are now private loans, they are extremely hard to discharge in bankruptcy. If you're considering refinancing federal loans into private loans, or are dealing with private loans right now, it will probably help to know what the differences are. Here's a quick comparison of federal and private loans. The lender. For federal loans, it's the federal government. For private, it's a private financial institution such as a bank or a credit union. The interest rate is fixed on federal loans, and it can be fixed or variable on private loans. Repayment usually starts after graduation versus payments might be due while still in school on private loans. Approval is based on need determined during the financial aid application process. Private loans only look at creditworthiness. Federal loans don't generally require a cosigner, but private loans usually do. And federal loans have numerous benefits, such as extended repayment plans, income-driven repayment plans, and loan forgiveness. None of these federal benefits apply to private loans. If you're struggling with private student loan payments, you do have some options. However, they vary widely depending on your lender, There are no set standards, so some lenders may offer programs and features that others do not. More and more private lenders, though, are offering a version of deferment and forbearance. The terms and eligibility can be far different than with federal loans, but if you're having trouble with payments, this may provide you with some temporary relief. Another option is to refinance a loan into a new private loan with more favorable or more affordable terms. You may be able to refinance into a new loan with your current lender, or you might be able to find a better loan by shopping around. As I mentioned, your credit and ability to borrow will determine whether this is an option for you or not. One of the most common options is to modify the existing loan. Private lenders want you to be able to stay current, and some offer various modification programs. Many programs will incorporate some form of these two modifications. First, an interest rate reduction. Some lenders may lower your interest rate, which will help you lower your monthly payment. By itself, a rate reduction may only lower the payment slightly, but in combination with extending the term of the loan, the payment might be much more affordable. If the lender extends the term of the loan, say from 5 years to 10 years, you'll have to make payments for longer, but the monthly payment amount should drop substantially. The only way to know for sure what your lender offers is to contact them directly, explain your situation, and evaluate the options they present. We've covered a lot today on student loans, both federal and private, and I hope that you found it valuable as you navigate options with your loans. I want to state again that the hope is that you can find a way to make your student loan payments more affordable. The process to do that is to address any immediate problems. If you're falling behind or are already behind, you can use these tactics to get back closer and closer to current status. And if you are current, I'm hoping that you can explore programs and plans that might give you the best terms available, or maybe even forgive a portion of your loans. And lastly, once you're current and comfortable with your payments, that gives us a lot more options to be aggressive and possibly pay them off faster or leverage one of the many programs available. Here's a brief checklist for you to review each of your student loans depending on where you currently stand. Don't worry about copying this down. The activity worksheet for this week includes a more detailed checklist, but I just wanted to quickly review what we can use. For instance, if you're current on your loans, you might be able to make them more affordable by evaluating different repayment plans with different lengths or based on your income. You might find out that you're eligible for loan forgiveness or want to consolidate a loan. And if you don't think you'll need or be able to take advantage of the federal benefits, you could look at refinancing your federal loans into a private loan, which might be cheaper. Now, if you're behind or delinquent, reach out to your loan servicer and look at your options, like repayment plans. Maybe deferment or forbearance can help. Look at consolidating loans or even refinancing into a private loan. Keeping up good communication and even making partial payments will help show good faith. And lastly, if you're in default, contact your servicer right away. Starting the rehabilitation process is often the best and sometimes the only choice. But if you can rehabilitate your loan, you'll have access again to a variety of options which might help prevent it again. So for this week, you've learned a lot about student loans and are now armed with ideas on getting them current or making them more affordable. Use your Inventory Your Debts worksheet for Module 1, which should have all your student loans listed on it. Match up each of those student loans with the appropriate checklist on this week's Making Student Loans Affordable worksheet. These checklists will give you ideas for tackling each loan. Depending on how many loans you have and the status of each loan, and whether some are federal or some are private, this could be a detailed task, but don't worry. Start with the one that's most urgent. So congratulations on getting through Module 3. By managing your student loans, you're setting yourself up to take full advantage of even more strategies yet to come. I look forward to discovering even more exciting opportunities with you in the upcoming modules as we continue to take steps to break free for good.